Hello everyone! If you've been following along with our previous videos, you will see that I have the file that we've been working on pulled up here on my screen. This is 3R58 from the Protein Data Bank, and in today's video our goal is to add binding residues to this image and show how naproxen interacts with them. So we can start this off by going over to the Protein Data Bank and searching 3R58, which will bring up the journal article that is associated with this file. We can go directly over there, and in reading this article, you learn that naproxen has two main binding residues, and we can pull those up in Pymol by using the select command. And once we get here, we have a couple different options. So we're looking to select histidine 117 and tyrosine 55. We can use either RESN, which means residue name, in which case we will follow this with something like HIS for histidine. But this command here will select every histidine in our molecule, which is sometimes helpful, but in this case we don't want every histidine in our protein, we just want one of them, 117. So instead we're going to replace this with RESI, which is residue identifier. And we're going to follow this with just the number 117, and we can include as many numbers as we would like that correspond to as many residues as we would like to select. And so we'll follow it with a plus symbol, as well as the second number for tyrosine 55. And if we enter this command right now, it would work. It would generate a default selection named SELE in our sidebar here that selected both histidine 117 and tyrosine 55. However, it's sometimes easier, just while you're typing it in, to name this selection, because if you had something here that was already a default selection named SELE, this selection would override that and completely delete all of your work. Furthermore, it's also nice to just name it as you go, because you don't have to go through the process of going to action, rename selection, which sometimes gets kind of cumbersome if you're working with lots of selections. So we can just put in the name of our selection, which is going to be residues, follow it by a comma and a space, and this will just automatically create a selection entitled residues with these two selected in it. So just to review, we have our select command, followed by the name of our selection, which is residues, a comma, and then RESI for residue identifier, which uses the number of the residue we would like to select. We're selecting two residues, so we have both of their numbers, and we've separated them by a plus symbol. So if we enter this, you now see that we have the residues here. They're highlighted, but we have not told Pymol how to display them yet, so we can't really see them. But we have a selection here on the side entitled residues. So we can go ahead and go to show as, and we're going to choose sticks, and now we can see them. And we can also change their color so that they're not the same as the rest of the protein. So let's go to blue and deep blue. And then we can deselect it to kind of look at it a little better. And you'll see a main problem Pymol has is once you add a residue, it kind of has a problem rendering the rest of the protein as a smooth line. See, there's all these gaps here, and that kind of happens every time you try to add another residue. But there's a really easy fix. You can just go to hide cartoon, and it will delete everything in teal, but don't be alarmed because you just have to show the cartoon again. And once you do that, this time it will come back with all of the smooth lines and the residues completely incorporated into the cartoon. And so then the literature said that naproxen here is going to hydrogen bond to these residues. So we can show that by going to the A next to naproxen and find polar contacts. And there are a lot of options here, but kind of the just default one is to any atom. So if you don't have anything particular in mind, that's a nice one to choose. And now we have a selection here. It's called naproxen polar contacts, as well as you can see the dashed lines that represent the hydrogen bonds. And so we can deselect this at any time if we don't want to show those bonds anymore. However, let's keep them for now. You can also change the color if you don't like the yellow that Bimol has the default set at. And the next thing we can do is measure these bonds by going to Wizard Measurement. And it should already be set up to do distances, and it should just be telling you to click on the first atom. So we can do that and go to the histidine, and it's measured it as 2.9 angstroms and created a selection entitled Measurement 1. We can do that for the second bond as well. And it's nice once you're done with all of your measurements to get rid of the wizard, because then anytime you click anything within this window again, it will try to measure it if you're still within the wizard function. But then we can go and we can rename our measurements just to keep track of them. So I'm going to name this naproxen histidine for the first one. And the second one is naproxen tyrosine. And then the last thing that we can do is swap this over into 3-button editing. And this will allow us to move the labels for these numbers kind of off to the side instead of right directly on the yellow line, so that we can see them a little easier. And sometimes it's nice to save right before you go into 3-button editing mode, because it's kind of easy to mess things up within this setting if you're not careful about exactly what you're clicking on. And it's also hard to undo things in Bimol. But then on my Mac, I can move a label by holding down Command while I click. If you have a different type of computer, you can look within this box and it tells you what each of the keys do. Or you can also just look it up on the internet if this is confusing to you. It's always a great resource. And so I'm going to move this one as well. And there you have it. We have now added binding residues to our image. We've shown the hydrogen bonds to naproxen, and we have measured them.